Good afternoon. The presentation will begin shortly. The following presentation is for your educational purposes and should not be construed as your sole source of advice. As each person's tax situation is unique, we suggest you contact your local Liberty Tax Service professional, your personal tax advisor, or tax attorney to answer your questions about your specific tax situation. Again, our presentation will begin in just a moment. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Anthony Fagan. I'm a tax preparer with Liberty Tax Service in Vallejo, California, and I'd like to welcome all of you to this special webinar presentation on tax tips for Pure Romance consultants. Ladies who will be watching this, if you are a Pure Romance consultant and you're joining us, we're very happy to have you on the air today. If you're watching this on our YouTube presentation or our tape presentation thereafter, get to share this with your fellow sisters who are part of Pure Romance. A little bit of a background of myself. I've been a tax preparer with Liberty Tax for over 4 years. I'm currently the office supervisor for our Admiral Callahan location in Vallejo, California. And I do know a number of Pure Romance consultants who have come to me to ask questions about doing taxes. It's not one of the most wonderful subjects they want to hear during the year, but you know what? You ladies have a very important role in the education, the entertainment, and of course the empowerment of women. And we try to do the same thing. We try to educate, we try to empower, and we try to entertain you as best as we can. Jokingly, if I had had the time to get my little prop together, I would have shown you what some people do like to come in with sometimes during tax season. But I can imagine a few of you out here probably learned this situation very well. We have people who have come into our office and they're very excited. I'll say for the sake of this presentation, we'll say it was a Pure Romance consultant. I know you ladies are out there, you're wanting to do shows, you're all excited to bring in new recruits, new sisters to Pure Romance, and you're busy, always on the go. Well, there comes a time when you get everything together, you throw it into a lovely shoebox and you drop it off to your tax preparer. And we're thinking, well, maybe you got it all organized. Maybe this will be easy. And then you open up the shoebox and you realize it's not. Nothing for nothing, it happens. And you know what? We're going to try to teach you today how to avoid the perils of a shoebox itself when it comes to this. Now let's talk a little bit about what we're going to go over today. We're going to define to you what your role is as a Pure Romance consultant. We define who is employed and who is self-employed. We'll go over that with you. The biggest thing we want to teach you today is how to maintain good records. Very, very important. Not just for yourself and tax purposes, but for yourself and your business as well to see how you're doing. Of course, and related to taxes, you want to know, of course, what your income is coming in, but can you deduct anything? What is a qualified deduction on your tax return? We'll also talk about who needs to pay any self-employment tax, and that would include you. And we'll tell you when that has to be done. And we'll also tell you how to maybe file estimated tax payments throughout the year, every quarter, so that you're ahead of the game when it comes to doing your taxes. So obviously, we want to congratulate you on your business. We want to congratulate you for being a Pure Romance consultant. What you ladies do is outstanding. You are there in the stead of what Patty Brisbane, your founder, and Chris Cicconelli, your Chief Operating Officer, has proven to you over the time. I've had the opportunity of knowing some of you meeting some of you, going out to Cincinnati for a couple of national conventions. I know some of you are very excited to be heading out to Las Vegas soon for national training. And really, you have the opportunity to make new friends, work with what you love, and you have fun, and guaranteed you have fun. I've heard some way better than fun stories of how your parties go and the like. And trust me, nothing embarrassed me, whatever has gone on at those parties. But the reality is, you do what you love. You follow your guidelines, which is to empower, to educate, and to entertain. Now, we do the same thing, maybe not in the way Pure Romance does, but we certainly try to do that in taxes. We empower by teaching clients certain things you all need to know about doing taxes, how we can be the best tax preparation service by the year 2020. That's one of the goals of Mr. Hewitt, John Hewitt, and Liberty Tax. We're here to educate. We do these sorts of seminars. We do these sorts of workshops throughout the year. We educate our clients on what's important to report and even just simple things as to how to budget. And we'll talk about that later on in the presentation. And of course, we're here to have fun. If you see our waivers out there every tax season waving, bringing you on into the office, showing those smiles, doing those dance moves, that's our way of not only educating you and entertaining you that we're there, we're also there to tell you that, taxes are maybe not fun, but we're going to try to make the experience easy on you. And that's why we're here to help you out so you can concentrate on your business. So let's talk about what your role is as an independent consultant or an independent contractor. First of all, unless you're employed by Pure Romance directly at the office in Cincinnati, you are considered what is called an independent contractor. And how it's defined is you control or direct what will be done, how it is going to be completed, and you control when the work will be done. As an independent contractor, as a consultant for Pure Romance, really you're setting your show dates, you're setting how your show goes, and you're setting when you're going to do everything. In other words, you set your own schedule. Yes, you may get product from the company, and you may keep inventory, but you are the one that decides primarily when you do your business and how you do your business. Of course, within certain guidelines, of course, that Pure Romance has recommended. But generally speaking, you are considered an independent contractor. Another example to look at that is look at other similar businesses such as Avon, Mary Kay, Pampered Chef. People may be getting product and supplies from the company to sell, and they may be keeping an inventory. But generally speaking, you're controlling when you go out, how you do your business, when you work, what inventory you keep, and certainly when it will be done. So that's very important. In other words, you may get also a Form 1099 from Pure Romance at the end of the year. Well, what's that Form 1099 going to say? Particularly if you are a director and above, or you get a significant amount of overrides, or you are getting bonuses from the company, they're going to report it on a 1099 statement. That 1099 MISC, or miscellaneous income, is going to show how much you were paid out. There's also a box on the 1099 that's very important for all of you. If you get more than $5,000 of inventory for resale from Pure Romance to resell to your clients, you'll also get a 1099 even if all of those other boxes are blank. Why is that important? Because it also has to factor into doing your business inventory later on. We'll talk briefly about what's called COGS, or cost of goods sold, and how to calculate that. So keep that in mind as we go forward. Now let's talk about record keeping. I know many of you have your own system as to how to keep good records. That can vary person to person, system to system. But I have to tell you, it is extremely important that you keep good records of everything. Why? Very simple. How are you going to want to know how your business is doing? You want to be able to see if you're going to profit. Or maybe you're losing money, which is possible. It's important to obtain a system of some type uh, for record keeping. Now, we do have a system out there called Liberty Accounting. It's a double-blind system, a double-entry system rather, that allows you to put in your income and your expenses. As a matter of fact, also helps keep part of inventory. But you can do something simple as doing it in a notebook. You can do something simple as creating an Excel program, or nowadays Google Sheets, which is similar to Excel. You could create it in there. Backing up your receipts. We know there's a lot of paper in pure romance. You have receipts for this, you have receipts for that. You even have receipts for tolls, for supplies you have to buy. How do you back up all of your receipts? Well, if you're not making photocopies and you're not keeping your receipts in a binder or a little booklet or something, some of you may invest in a system called Neat. If you've seen in stores such as Staples or Office Max or Office Depot, they have a scanner system called Neat or Neat Desk. You can scan in to your computer your sales receipts, your business cards from fellow sister associates or even suppliers, your toll receipts, things of that nature. And what Neat will do is you can set it up in a way that it will break out for you certain expenses, certain income, for that matter, sales, inventory that you keep. It's important because when you do your monthly accounting, what money comes in, what money goes out, it's important to have that information. And by the way, Neat receipts, when they are captured into the computer, if you have to print them out, the IRS will consider that a valid receipt when you have to be checking for receipts, or they're requesting receipts if you're ever audited. Now, one of the other things of bookkeeping you do have to maintain, of course, is do you have to pay tax on your income? The reality is yes. The rule is if you make over $400 net of expenses, you have to file a tax return as a Schedule C self-employed individual. By doing that, you're also going to have to report what's called on a Schedule SE, your self-employment tax. Essentially, you are reporting what is considered your Social Security and your Medicare taxes. If you ever look at a pay stub and what they used to call FICA, that's what you're reporting. It's about 15, a little more than 15% is what you have to report as a tax. Now, half of that tax gets to get taken off later in your tax return, but you have to report the full amount. Some of you may also have to do what's called estimated taxes. If you make a lot of money in your business, it's best to set aside some of that money and pay it ahead, usually quarterly, in order to pay federal taxes. Now, there's a worksheet that you would have to file on a quarterly basis called a 1040-ES. You can get that through the IRS website, www.irs.gov. It's going to contain a worksheet that you can estimate what your taxes are that are due. The calculation you really have to figure out when you do that is pretty much this. If you know you're going to owe at least $1,000 this year, after you take out any withholdings or refundable credits, and it's going to be at least 90% of the tax that you showed on, you're going to show on your 2015 tax return this year, or it's at least 100% of the tax that was showed on your last year's tax return, you're going to want to report that. You're making estimated payments. You report those on your tax return when you file your returns by April 15th. There are ways you can submit those payments either by a voucher. If you're here in California, you're typically mailing those vouchers to San Francisco. If you're living in another state, it will depend on the region that you're in as to where you mail it. You can go online and use your credit or debit card even though there may be a surcharge added to that. Or you can use what's called an Electronic Federal Tax Payment System, or EFTPS, and all of that information is at irs.gov. And of course, if you talk with us here at Liberty, we'll also help you estimate what those payments are. If you're going to make estimated tax payments, they're 4 times a year when you do it. Typically April 15th or tax day, June 15th, September 15th, and then January 15th of next year. Now, if the 15th happens to fall on a Saturday, Sunday, or holiday, it'll be due on the next business day. Now, here's why record keeping is important, as I mentioned. You want to know what's coming in, you want to know what's going out. If you learn a software program such as Liberty Accounting, which we can tell you more information about if you have any questions, or QuickBooks, some of you are savvy enough, you may use Sage or Peachtree Accounting, or even if you create an Excel spreadsheet of your own, or if you do it the old-fashioned way by pen and paper, learn how to use some form of an accounting system. Or simply put, you can hire somebody to do your income and expenses. You can hire a bookkeeper. Believe it or not, if you have a teenage son or daughter who's good in math and also good in computers and maybe do something, you could even conceivably pay them to help you do your business, do your books. Now, we talked about a self-employment tax obligation as well. The self-employment tax obligation is important because, again, you are paying into the Social Security and Medicare system with your earnings from your self-employment. Again, it makes up about 15%. For this coming year, it's 15.3% of your net earnings is reported as taxable as taxes on your tax return. The majority of it is for Social Security. The remainder of it is for Medicare. Again, it works out to be about 15%. When you file your tax return, if you file Schedule C, once you do all your calculations, that 15% is important to report. Now, we've talked about what you're getting for income. Now let's talk about some qualified deductions. What can you claim? What can you take as an expense? For pure romance consultants, you primarily can take away all of your expenses for your business supplies, your advertising costs, which are primarily any costs you pay to Media Center, any costs you pay to Vistaprint, say to purchase your marketing materials, such as your business cards, any other supplies that you have to purchase in relation to the business. That's even if you go to the dollar store and you're buying supplies such as making up baskets to give as gifts for your hostess, things of that nature. Those are important expenses you want to try to claim. You don't necessarily have the health insurance claim for pure romance consultants, but there are certain providers that may offer you to buy health insurance. You may want to check with a new consultant office to see if this is available to you. But health insurance can be claimed as a qualified deduction. Now, just to remind you, as a result of the Affordable Care Act, everyone does have to have some form of health insurance under the law. If you purchased self-insurance, say from a private carrier, there may be taxable advantages to do that as a self-employed individual if you're not claimed by a spouse or a domestic partner on their tax return or on their insurance policy. So you may want to consider that as an expense, and we can discuss that with you. All of you I know have cell phones. I don't know of any pure romance consultant out there that does not have a cell phone. Now, if you have a cell phone, may I just caution you that if you're using your cell phone for both personal reasons and your business, you're going to have to figure somehow, some way, how much of your cell phone bill went to business expense. Then that portion can be deducted on your tax return. Auto mileage, very important, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but it's very important to keep track of your miles when you do your shows. When you go to conference, Those of you coming up to Las Vegas, you got those of you that are renting cars going out there. Keep an eye on your mileage because you can deduct that on your tax returns. And we'll talk about that in a second. Of course, any other supplies you have to buy for your business, any office supplies. Note your business supplies such as your order forms, things of that nature. Because they treat those separately when you do orders with Pure Romance direct from the home office, you know you don't get discounted for those, but they are expendable items where you can get them as a deduction on your tax return. Those of you that do advertising, now, depending on the requirements the Pure Romance sets out for you, you certainly could advertise just about anywhere. You take an ad out in the paper. You place an ad in a magazine. If you use Google or pay-per-click, some people do use that. Those of you mostly who show your website, now the websites are offered to you for free as part of your package through Pure Romance. You are given a link where people can go out to a website and order from you. Typically under your consultant agreement, you may or may not have your own website set up. You would have to refer to your agreements to do that. But if you're doing any other form of advertising, those can be considered qualified deductions on your tax returns. Now let's talk about auto mileage. I know a lot of you travel. A lot of you travel for your shows. It is important that you keep track of your mileage. Anytime you use your car and you're going from your home to a show and back, because you typically work from home, normally those miles are considered commuting miles and you're not allowed to deduct those. But in the type of business you do, any travel from your house to a hostess's home to conduct a show is considered deductible miles. How do you keep track of it? The simplest way, folks, is to buy a dollar store notebook, little tiny one. They only run about $1, sometimes 50 cents. You put down the date, the reason for the trip. You want to know the starting mileage on your odometer, and you want to know your ending mileage on your odometer. If you happen to go somewhere where you have to pay for parking, or you got to cross the bridge, or any tunnel that you have to pay tolls on, keep those receipts. Here in California, if you have Fast Track, that is the electronic toll system. Now, in a lot of cases nowadays, toll takers are no longer going to be on these bridges pretty soon. We are ultimately going to end up being an electronic toll taking system. Your Fast Track statement will show you every time you went through a toll booth. And generally speaking, if you know the dates you went for a show, you can match up those dates on your Fast Track statement and you know you can deduct those tolls. Now, there are programs out there that are sort of working off a GPS that are available on a smartphone. One that I will personally recommend that I have tried out is called Mile IQ. That's MILEIQ. It's a free program. It's available on Google Play. It's available on Apple Store. You simply download it to your phone, and anytime you travel in a vehicle, whether it be your own car, someone else's car, even a bus, it is going to track where you started from and where you ended when you got off the bus or you stopped your car. If that trip is for business, there is a way on your phone that you can classify that as being a personal trip or a business trip. When you do that, you'll be able to also calculate what your miles are that you can deduct from your tax return. And right now, this year, I believe coming, the rate is going to be 57.5 cents per mile. But again, you can keep it very simple. You can just keep it in a notebook and keep good track of it because you need to add up your miles later on. Now let's also talk about what most people do ask us a lot about, and that is a home office. If you are in your home and you have one room set aside that you do nothing but business work in, that means your computer may be there, your printer may be there, your supplies are in there, but you don't have a bed in there. You don't have your kids' items in there. You're not sharing the room with someone, etc. That is what the IRS will consider a home office. So it's within your personal residence. You do have to use it solely for business. You cannot occupy it by anything but your business materials. One question that has sometimes come across is, well, what if I keep my clothes in there? What if I put something else in there that relates to the house? Generally speaking, what we have to remind people is to just make sure that the room is being used solely for business. It's not being used as a room for guests to stay in or anything of that nature. Some of you may work in a detached garage. Maybe you have a room in your detached garage, say above your garage area. Now, I do see this in some cases. That technically is still considered a home office. It is still part of the property. To be technical about it, as long as nothing else is going on in the room, the IRS would consider it a home office. So, how do you deduct that from your return? Well, there's two ways you can do it. If you want to take actual expenses that are direct or indirect related to the room in the house, typically you want to know what the square footage of the house is. Then you want to divide it by the number of occupiable rooms in the house. That means any room where you're going to be eating, living, or sleeping. You then take that number, divide it into the square footage. You then can look at the square footage, start dealing with your deductions there. If you paint the entire house, that's considered an indirect expense. But if you paint the room where you're doing your business, that's a direct expense. If you paint the house, it's an indirect expense, et cetera, et cetera. That's one way you can calculate your deductions. The other way you can look at it is do it as a simplified deduction. Anybody who does a tax return after January 1st of 2013 can use this option, and you can only choose one of the two. Typically, you're going to be allowed $5 per square foot up to 300 square feet, or a maximum deduction of $1,500. Saves a lot of bookkeeping expenses for people. You can look at both ways to see what is best for you when you do your tax returns, but keep that in mind. The IRS does have a publication out there. It's Pub 587. It's called The Business Use of a Home. If you have questions about that, again, you can get that publication as well at irs.gov, or you can talk with your tax advisor. We can discuss that with you. Speaking of tax advisors and the like, as I mentioned, for those of you in Pure Romance, you have your own websites through the company. Typically, that's part of your package. You don't necessarily have a charge for that as part of a Pure Romance consultant. However, if you do hire a bookkeeper, if you do hire someone to do your taxes, specifically your business taxes, you can have those costs deducted as an expense under professional services, your return. One other thing to keep in mind as well, if you're living in a city or county that requires you to have a license, a business license to operate, the cost of that business license is also considered deductible. You have to check with your city or county. Every city and county is different as to what the regulations are, what the cost is for that, who is required to have that. I do know of instances where if you file a return and you have not had a business license, sometimes the city or county will get that information, and as such, you may get a letter that says you may be operating a business, you may have to have a license. Don't ignore those letters, folks. They're just as important as the letters from the IRS. But if that does happen, you know that the cost of those can be deducted. Now, those of you who are going to come to Las Vegas and convention coming up, or if you've gone to Cincinnati, just understand your travel to Cincinnati for the conventions is considered a deductible expense. If you're traveling to Cincinnati and you want to spend a few days with relatives in another state, the portion of travel going to Cincinnati, for example, would be covered. You travel from Cincinnati to, say, Michigan would not be covered if you're going to see relatives up there. Just keep that in mind. If you're going to Vegas this coming about 11 days from now, actually from when this presentation is being done, from July 19th, so the end of July, if you're going to the Vegas training. If you're flying to Vegas, or if you've been driving to Vegas, you're renting a car, going out there, those travel expenses can be deductible. If you're doing meals and entertainment, here are the rules. Pretty much, as long as you are not doing something that is exceedingly lavish or extravagant, no Dom Perignon, ladies, I'm sorry, and the event and the meal is directly related for business purposes, 50% of that cost is considered deductible. So if you take a prospective consultant to dinner and talk about pure romance business for that period of time, and say the dinner combined comes to, we'll say, $40, $20 of that is considered a deductible expense. When you keep a tab on your meals and deductions, make notes to yourself as to what the business purpose of the meal was for. And again, it can't be anything extravagant. So I know that's a lot of information that we have covered today. As you notice in this circle, everything relates to your business. Most people think tax season ends on April 15th. It really doesn't. Tax season is a year-round event, as is your business. Your business starts on January 1st. It goes all the way to December 31st. We talked about cost of goods just briefly. If you carry inventory, ladies, you should be doing an inventory at the very beginning of the year. You need to know what is in your stock. You need to know what's going on. And by the way, how much you purchased it for, because that's considered cost of goods sold. It's not how much you actually sold the goods for, but what you bought the goods for that is considered in that calculation. So many of you, if you are a new consultant and you didn't carry inventory, your cost of goods is considered zero. At the end of the year, if you've purchased a kit and you still have supplies of that kit, you want to figure how much of that kit is remaining and how much you paid for in those items. So in other words, your retail cost, your wholesale cost, is considered as the cost of goods in that case. Why is that important? It all revolves into record keeping. You want to know what you've got in stock. You want to basically tally up all of your supplies, all of your demos, all of your hostess gifts, all of your business expenses. When you do that, if you have to pay estimated tax payments, those come into play. If you have to pay a self-employment tax, that's important. If you want to be able to deduct and save some money for qualified deductions, we've gone over that as well. And this doesn't just apply to pure romance consultants. Anybody who is self-employed has to go through all of this every year. And one thing we are here for to do is to help you. Now, just in closing, we do want to remind you there are additional seminars that Liberty can offer to you, whether it be to your group, to your church, to your business. We can talk about certain subjects. One of the most important ones coming up for everybody really is going to be the Affordable Care Act. Again, it is the law. Every American, every person who is legally in the United States is required to carry health insurance. It's a very hot topic. We don't get political about it, but we explain how important it is to have the insurance as well as what it does for your taxes. If you're a small business owner, we can teach you a seminar on marketing. We can give you specific tax tips that relate to your business. For kids going back to school, going back to college, those of you that may be eligible for the American Opportunity Act tax credit, saving on your college education. We have done seminars simply as also to how to plan to do a budget. What is on a W-4? In other words, how many exemptions do you claim when you do get your checks? Things of that nature. We do those all for you, and we do them for free. So how do you find out about that? How do you need additional help in what we talked about today or any of these seminars? We're always here to offer you free tax advice. If you want to schedule an appointment, there'll be some information coming up on how to do so, because we are the fastest growing tax preparation service. Between our company and franchise stores, we have over 4,400 locations throughout the United States and Canada that are available for you to talk with. For those of you who have questions specific about this presentation, whether you're viewing this live or you're watching this on YouTube, you can contact me in Vallejo, California at the address shown on the screen. My email address is there as well. It's anthony.fagen, that's F-A-G-E-N, at libtax.com. Or again, you can call me at that office number, 707-552-3278. I am more than happy to answer any questions you may have, either about this presentation or about any tax questions whatsoever. If you need to see somebody right away and you're not in the California area, or you're not in the Vallejo area rather, you can call our toll-free number, which is 866-871-1040. That'll route you to the local office nearest you. Or you can go out to our website, which is www.libertytax.com. There's a way that you can put in your information about where you're located, and it will locate the office that is nearest you at that time. So that is the presentation, as you now see me here live in and of itself. At the moment, I don't see any questions that have come up. I'm just going to take a look here just to see. And so far, I don't see any questions. So what we'll do is we will end the presentation for right now. Again, if you have any questions, you can contact me at anthony.fagen@libertytax.com. That's spelled F-A-G-E-N. Or you may call me at the toll-free number 866-871-1040. That'll get you to the office nearest you, or you can call me direct at 707-552-3278, and you'll reach our office location. I'd like to thank all of you for listening to this presentation today. This has been, I hope, some starting education for all of you here with Liberty Tax, and of course for all of you in your peer romance business. We wish you the greatest of success with it, and we thank you for joining us today. Have a good day.